Thank you very much. My name is Thomas, and I'm going to have a very specific question towards you because I love the floating sauna project. I'm actually about to build my own floating sauna, and as you can imagine, I'm trying to keep the budget as low as possible. I've just started to make kind of a research on how to do it, how to approach it. So my question is, how did you make it float, and how would you propose to make such a project as cheap as possible and as beautiful as yours was?
Well, the short answer is that we didn't manage to keep it floating. So we went that wasn't a part of the assignment either, but so we were always thinking somebody will keep it floating, and the holes in the pontoon will be dealt with, but these are the kinds of things that you need to take into consideration when you do these kind of temporary projects. Things might go wrong, but at least we managed to keep it in function as long as the whole thing was floating. To keep the cost down, I think, the saunas are kind of generous assignments because a good sauna is a space where there is a lot of heat, and you keep the heat up by keeping the size of the space as small as possible. So, and we learned from the previous project that we did in the one in Moss that we were being too ambitious about the size of the space. We should have kept it further down, and we would have gotten better heat and so on. So, yeah, that's a short answer.
Okay, anyone else? I have a question maybe for Steve about the, let's say, tourist infrastructure in Iceland. When I was there was a new hostel open in Reykjavik, and everyone was having the discussion about that the infrastructure for tourists is not sufficient in Iceland. Is it true, or is it different than we see from distance?
There's never enough toilets. In my opinion, there's probably too much infrastructure because it's making it too easy for people to go to places that are most enjoyed by walking there yourself. So if I was to have my opinion on it, I would actually make places harder to get to than easier to get to, and move the service infrastructure to places that would be maybe close to the road, would encourage people to stop, go to the lavatory, maybe have a coffee, relax, whatever, get information, take some pictures of one another, and then go on. And leave those precious places that we have for the very few that actually can be bothered to make that journey. That way you can enjoy the nature as it is. If you fill the nature with lots of wood and rusty steel, you don't have the nature anymore. So it's a very curious thing. Personally, I am not enjoying the massification of tourism in Iceland. We're selling our grandmother. We have a very, very delicate nature, and actually what is happening is because the tourists are coming and enjoying it, with every footfall, they're making it less enjoyable for the next person that comes. So the greater that we can make that threshold, the better for everybody in the long term. But there are powers that want to make more money out of this because there's a quick buck to be had, and the nature is something that you can milk for free. So you can rent a car, or lots and lots of cars, and you can make money on that because people are going to see that nature, which is essentially a free resource. Until we change that, we're going to be in a worse and worse situation. And the conundrum of that is, I don't actually want that nature to be sold either. So I don't know how to fix it. But At the end of the day, we probably just need a few more toilets.
That's right. I never know what is the proper answer to this, because usually people say, let's have some admission fee, at different places. But I don't know whether this filter might work well. I don't know whether this solution is the proper one. But I don't think so. But I don't know what is the better one.
What you may just find is that Iceland gets so expensive that it ceases to become fashionable. And I think probably the best idea is we send them to Prague instead and let you enjoy them. You know what it means. You get nicer restaurants, you get some better service. It's nice to have life on the street. And actually, to a certain level, tourists are incredibly enjoyable. But then it becomes a saturation point that it ceases to be enjoyable for anybody. And how you manage that is a conundrum that I don't think anybody has found the answer to. And the one thing about creating a barrier to entry, which is payment to areas, that's the antithesis of what Iceland is about. It's about freedom and it's about ownership for everybody. So that does make the whole thing extremely complicated. So I look back to the days that I first came to Iceland, and we'd go out of Reykjavik, maybe 25 kilometers drive away, we'd be on a dirt road, and we'd be the first people, you imagined, you were the first people ever walking on that piece of earth. You don't get that feeling anymore. But it's in my memory, and it's an extraordinary experience.
Okay, so is it different in Norway in terms of tourism? I mean, given to maybe the size of the country, but are there any similarities, or is it totally different?
Yes, you have the same situation taking place in certain areas, especially Lofoten has exactly the same discussion going on as in Iceland. How do we how can we create better? How can we welcome people in a better way, and reduce the pressure of the nature, so the discussion about entrance fee or an entrance or a kind of tax for every traveler, it's the same thing in Norway, and there's not a good answer to any of those. Although I'm much more in favor of just saying that when you arrive to Iceland or arrive to Norway, you should take a part in paying for what it takes to maintain the nature, no matter if you're only staying there for a day and going on a business meeting, because this kind of having entrance tickets into all kinds of places, and you don't know in the end what is fee-based and what is not fee-based, just creates a lot of confusion and the feeling of not being welcome there anymore. But yes, very much agree with Steve that it is a question of having better facilities. Toilets are very much needed, but nobody wants to pay for the toilets because the municipalities are not getting any part of the income from the tourism. They are suffering very much. There is the large companies, the airlines and the bus companies are skimming the money. Kind of tour guides. This goes to people that are living in Reykjavik, and the municipalities they hardly see any of that revenue.
So there's a question in the auditorium.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the atmosphere you create while giving your presentation. So I try to, it brings out some honesty out of me. So thank you very much. I will give it a chance. I pick up the point that as an architect, you end up asking questions anthropologists ask. I guess these are the questions of meaning, purpose, and so on. And I am an anthropologist myself, but I work among the architects, primarily for the city institution. And I have this observation I'd like to share even with you. I don't know how many non-architects are here in the room, but you know, there's this concept of social engineering. That sometimes it's used to block certain ideas, activities. Oh, we are not social engineers. We don't do such things. And I keep kind of bumping into this kind of defense language, yeah. But I feel like it's somehow pretentious. No, we are building the city. Of course, we are civil engineers. So, what kind of purpose does it serve? And where is this invisible line of what's acceptable activity for the institute responsible for planning and development, big D, small d, and what is not our purpose? And I keep asking this. And I have certain, theories for this. And like in the communist times, the top-down planning, stuff like that, now we are in the opposite spectrum, free market, competition, regulation is still kind of dirty word, yeah? But what if we start seeing there's more freedom for the wealthy? And if we start seeing that, okay, how do we recalibrate the public institution? And why are we using this term social engineering is actually not our thing if we are to protect public interests in the first place? So this is a bit of a long introduction to my question. Have you ever encountered in your practice this type of like defense, or in Nordic countries in your context it's not like really there, this type of blocking by the more technical disciplines? Yeah, I hope it's kind of clear where I'm heading.
Who is supposed to say both?
I'm curious from both, but primarily from you maybe, because you hinted on anthropology.
Yeah, I think we have encountered a lot of these issues because first of all, architecture is social in essence. We are social beings. We make shelters for human beings, and hence they become social in a way. So either it's in our living rooms or in the streets or our squares. So the architecture is social, and we have to work to a certain extent with social engineering as well, because architecture does something to the surroundings, and it creates ripples in the water, and that is, if not social engineering, it's micro-engineering to some extent. But our first project, the first bottom-up projects that we did were very much about this democratization of the discussion, because planning practices have been, or planning has been practiced from top to the bottom. You are forcing the will of the politicians and the experts on the population. And with globalism, people are feeling, what's the word, kind of left behind, or they are not, feel that they're not being listened to. So, so there is a need to go back to the grassroots and see what's taking place there. And so we wanted to kind of give people a voice and do projects that were partly generated by the will of the people, or the interest of the people. I didn't show any of them here, but we have done several of those, and of course, in the end, the one we did with the Oslo School of Architecture in, when was it, 2017, was in the end the the opposition politician, he made a phone call to the leader of the council that operated this area and said that you will get very bad reputation if you don't remove that building. They did. So you risk getting you risk communicating with the top level politicians in the end by doing things with the grassroots. So we saw the kind of efficiency of doing things bottom up because that discussion that came with it was a bit too painful for the politicians.
Comment?
You seriously want to hear my comment? As an architect, we are working with people. We're making spaces that are occupied by people. Without people, we wouldn't have a job. So every time that we make a space, we think about how the people will move in the space and how they'll experience it, where the light comes in, what kind of acoustics there are. And that's irrespective of what kind of person they are. If they're a tall person, or sometimes we have very small people. We also have people from different cultures. All these things have been taken into the equation when you're designing a room. Now we get help with that process, sometimes by having clients, like, for example, the city of Reykjavik, who thinks it's a good idea to have the society come and give comments for a new project. I'm specifically thinking about a planning project that we were invited to develop. They asked local stakeholders to meet and make comments and a list of all the things that should be this or should be that, should be the other. Usually those comments, highest on the list, there should be more play areas for children, the areas should be safe, there should be good street lighting, good surface finishes, high quality buildings, low cost housing, essentially everything that everybody wants, but nobody wants to pay for. So this is given to us as an indication of how you're supposed to do it. We say, well, that's very good. Now can you increase the budget by 150%? Because everything on the list is great, but you're not allowing for it in your program. That, of course, doesn't happen, so you do your best as an architect to fulfill all of those needs, which you sort of more or less knew anyway, because they're basic human needs. There are some new things that come in because you haven't twigged it, you haven't read the site right, but that's normally in the minimal thing. Then we go through this whole planning process, everybody's happy, we settle all of the items that are on the list. In this particular instance, the thing that should not be there is a hotel. And the other thing that should not be on the list is that it should be a big development. We want to build this block which has been bought up by one person, which has then gone to the banks and gone to the city. It should be developed by lots of little developers. To get back to that small scale of Reykjavik, we think this is a good idea. Work with it, develop it with the city. When we get to the point that we have finished the final documentation for that development, the city is just about to rubber stamp it and put it through the planning committee. The city, before it's even stamped, sells that plot to a developer. But not only does he sell that plot, he sells the plot next to it and half of the plot next to it to one developer. And what does the city put on that plot? What else would you put but a hotel? So we go through this process of pleasing the people, of engaging the people to take their time to give their opinion. We go through this sort of show of engagement and social justice. And then when the notes are on the table, when the money is on the table, you just forget it. And then we can just blame the architect for making those decisions. So this is the sort of reality that we're in. What we try and do is approximation of what we want to achieve. but we can only achieve it if the political systems allow us to do that.
Okay. So I hope that we would end up with a more optimistic sentence.
It's a great job, but this shit happens too. You know, that's just the way it is. You know.
Okay. We are not going to sugarcoat reality, you know. So that's the positive that's the positive thing of this answer. So I think thank you very much for for all the presentations, because believe it or not, for us like Czech people living in a landlocked country, having no glacier, having no nature of that quality, so we love to watch the places you were showing. Believe it. Yeah. Thank you very much, even for this short discussion. Now we will have a coffee break, and then we will continue with two more guys. One of them from three, actually. Three. Seriously. Okay, we have a Ostrava. Okay, you are right. We have a Prague, Ostrava, and Trutnov. So we have the distribution of the center and even the other parts of the country, just to keep the certain balance. Okay, thanks a lot. For the moment, we will keep in a while.